you know, my talk is, of course, along those lines. Um, I titled it Freedom Within, a Declaration of Spiritual Independence. And I am going to come back to that interdependence though, because that's that's fascinating because I talk about that a lot in my job to the people that I teach, the blind people, people with vision impairments, who, we're working toward independence, and what I tell them is everybody is really just degrees of interdependent on others. It kind of depends on how and how much, but we all truly are interdependent. So I love that daily word. Um, so who celebrated the 4th of July yesterday? Did anyone? All right, we had some people who went out and enjoyed themselves. I celebrated by staying in. Me and Ron watched this entire week. We've been watching the Ken Burns series on the Revolution. So I've been brushing up on my American history. I feel like I'm learning it all over again, actually. And it was really cool. And it just this was completely an accident, but the way it worked out, the final one in the series happened yesterday. We watched one every single day, and just kind of by accident, it ended up being the last one on July 4th. So, we enjoyed a day in the air conditioning. And, honestly, because I'm out all over the place for my work, really my vacation is just staying home. I just love to stay home when I can, when I have a whole day free. Um, so anyway, as you know, our nation celebrated this immense occasion, this 250 years of an ongoing experiment in democracy. And with all of the trappings, the fireworks, the picnics, the family gatherings, the red, white, and blue, and all the things that make the 4th of July really uniquely American. And we feel pride in this grand experiment. I feel pride, despite the many flaws. I feel proud of my country. And, I think we should, especially watching what people suffer, how these soldiers suffered so horribly for very little in return. The very existence of our democracy is remarkable and even unlikely. It's endured through wars, division, triumphs, failures, and generations of people since the revolution and forward who believed that freedom was worth fighting and even dying for. But this morning, I want to explore a different kind of freedom, the freedom that no government can and no circumstance can take away. What if the most important revolution doesn't happen in the streets, but in the heart? Our nation was founded on an ideal. Thomas Jefferson wrote those famous words that we all know. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That ideal changed history. But ideals are not the same as reality, and as we know, the founding fathers that owned slaves are indeed hypocrites of the highest order. Jefferson himself wrote words that reveal the tension that he lived with. He knew his own hypocrisy. And this is written on the Jefferson Memorial. God who gave us life, gave us liberty. I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just. Commerce between master and slave is despotism. Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free. So this brings me to something that may sound surprising. I think that hypocrisy, as uncomfortable as it is, can actually be a good thing. So stay with me. We can all see hypocrisy in others. It's everywhere. And we judge them. We see we know Christians that have failed to live up to the teachings of Christ, but that isn't the point. The point isn't that any of us really, ever fail to live up to our highest values and ideals. The point is that we have an ideal at all. America has always been more than a place. It's this aspiration, something, this is what people were fighting for, the belief in this high ideal. Jefferson and the other leaders and philosophers of his time communicated those ideals that became codified in our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and the laws of this nation. And every generation since have been fighting to close the gap between the ideal and the reality. History tells that story again and again. And what's more dismaying to me is that no group has ever been handed equality. Every group through history has had to fight and fight hard and long to achieve that dream of equality. Um, so suffragists, women fought for 70 years before winning the right to vote. Ron and I recently saw the Broadway musical called Suffs at the National Theater. It's about Alice Paul, whose efforts got, who among others, she and others got the 19th Amendment passed. And, you know, how those women worked, organized, marched, sacrificed, even endured imprisonment. Little aside, the ladies who came and acted in that play, and it was all female, even the male roles were played by women. They went to the Lorton Workhouse, what used to be the Lorton Workhouse, which is now an arts center, but they toured that area while they were in DC. This is a traveling play going throughout the US, and they were only here for a week. So they got that opportunity while they were here. But I digress. So the Civil Rights Movement tells a similar story. Legal victories like Brown v. Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act were milestones, but they didn't instantly erase prejudice or injustice. Years ago, I visited the home of Frederick Douglass, which is now a national park, on the 4th of July, and an interpreter recited Douglass's famous speech, "What to the slave is the 4th of July," an intense and very moving rebuke of America's hypocrisy. And it was a really cool experience too, by the way, for the future, to sit on top of that very high hill and look out over the entire city and see the fireworks going off all over the place like popcorn silently, because it was too far away to hear. You know, Douglass wasn't rejecting America's ideals. He was challenging America to live up to them. Jefferson himself asked, and this is also in the memorial, what a stupendous machine is man, who can endure toil, imprisonment, or death in vindication of his own liberty, and the next moment inflict upon another a bondage far worse than that which he himself resisted. So this is shining a spotlight on the very human nature of people who are, I would argue, it's about awareness. You know, it's about a lack of awareness of what it is that one wants, and a failure to empathize with other people who want the same. So this is not just political. Obviously, the title is their spiritual independence. So every one of us knows truths that we don't always live. And it can be uncomfortable, but it's okay. Every one of us has moments when fear is louder than love. You know, so there also have been groups beyond the ones that we normally think of who have been oppressed and had to fight in America. Every wave of immigrants, right? The Catholics, the Irish, Jewish people have experienced discrimination. And I wonder why. You know, why is it that the folks who fight so hard for their own liberty require other people to fight for theirs? And I don't have an answer for that. I think it's an important question to ask. But I think at the root, as you've probably heard me say before, I'm a big get down to the root kind of person. And I believe the very root of it is about fear. You also may have heard me say, what's the most repeated phrase in the Bible? Does anybody know?
Fear not.
Do not fear.
Fear not.
Fear not. Fear not. Yes. Thank you. I didn't hear that. and every variation within. I do think that that is the true purpose of the Bible. The true purpose of spirituality is to teach us how not to fear, because what we fear we will destroy. Now, I don't think, we're in a unity is made up of an exceptional group of people, but we still, can have these kinds of unconscious prejudices. I have certainly had to confront my own. Having high ideals is really uncomfortable. And, one of the examples that I thought of is, maybe it's a little trivial, but have you ever noticed a car with a Jesus fish on the bumper and that driver is behaving badly? And you're like, oh, yeah, good Christian, I mean, right? So, without an ideal, what I would like to say is, I'm not trying to excuse bad behavior. I'm trying to give other people grace because we want grace, because our instructions are to treat others the way we would like to be treated. And because if there is no ideal, there's nothing to do. What would we be without something to fight for? One of my favorite verses in the Bible is simply, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. He didn't say the truth would make us uncomfortable, but sometimes the truth is uncomfortable. And I'm going to share a quote with you that does say that. There's a saying in the Gospel of Thomas, because it's so different from what we're used to hearing, the seek and you will find message. I should probably take this hat off. It's very patriotic, but it's also blocking. Jesus says, let the one who seeks continue seeking until he finds. When he finds, he will be troubled. When he is troubled, he will be amazed. And when he is amazed, he will reign over the all. Now, how's that for, a biblical quote? Of course, that didn't make it into the canonical Bible. But I would have no trouble believing that that is the original, saying of seek and you will find. Be troubled, be amazed, then reign over the all. And to me, that is what spiritual growth feels like. Christ came to teach us how to be, not simply what to believe. He taught that we must go through the discomfort to go through to freedom, to come through to freedom, and the truth will set you free. He set people free from fear, from shame, guilt, free from believing they were somehow separated from God. I've been thinking about freedom a lot lately because I'm getting ready to retire. After 30 years teaching orientation and mobility, I'll be retiring somewhere around the end of this month, July or August. And it's a little ironic that I'm eager for my freedom because I've had one of the best jobs anybody could ever have. I've had tremendous freedom. For 30 years, I've driven all over Northern Virginia from DC line and into DC and, over to West Virginia and to Southern counties. Really, I've been all over the state at one time or another. And, I've made my own schedule. I've met amazing people. Management mostly left me alone. And I love the work. So retirement has me asking a deeper question. What does freedom really mean? I mean, if I didn't feel free for those 30 years, and, really, I feel like I'm chomping at the bit. I can't wait. So I think that the truth about freedom is that external freedom isn't enough if we're still have some kind of imprisonment in our hearts. And, for these 30 years, I've taught people with vision loss how to overcome fear. Like I say, I talk about fear a lot because I think it's really critically important. All of us have something locked up inside of ourselves. And I think fear is almost always based on a lie. And I'm going to give you an example from my work. So I teach people how to use a white cane on stairs, okay? Going up and down stairs using a white cane. And if they have some vision, if they will allow me to, I'm going to put a blindfold on them. I want to be able to completely eliminate the vision that they have, because looking down a set of stairs when all you can see is a ramp, or you can't see all the stairs, it's scarier, frankly, having low vision looking down at stairs than if you just can't see anything. And I teach them how to use the cane, how to get down the stairs, up and down the stairs. And sometimes people are just frozen in fear, absolutely paralyzed. And they'll say something like, I feel like I'm standing at the edge of a cliff. Okay. So I just say, gosh, if I were standing at the edge of a cliff and being asked to step off of it, I would be terrified too. There's no way I'm doing that. So, and I'm sure all of you would feel the same way. But I tell them, you have to tell yourself the truth. You can your brain makes an assumption and your body follows. Your body says, cannot tell the difference between the truth and a lie. So they feel the fear. You have to tell yourself, when I step down, there's going to be a step there. Then I talk them through the breathing and the relaxing, and I ask them if they've ever meditated, because that's great training for the body, teaching the muscles how to relax. So that's the rational brain talking to the limbic brain, right? That reptilian brain is still there, kind of running the show behind the scenes, until our rational brain says, I'm just standing at the top of a set of stairs, and you take a step. And then you get that feedback. Okay, there's a step there. And then you take another one. And slowly, one step at a time, you're down, and you did it. You confronted that lie, and you showed your body that it was not true. So there was never a cliff. And I have found that fear either gets better or it gets worse. And there's really not much in between. If we avoid the things that we're afraid of, then the body learns, be afraid, be very afraid. And if we face it courageously, the brain hears and the body hears another message. Gosh, there was really nothing to worry about. I think that's true of almost every fear. And of course, I'm not counting being chased by lions. When does that happen? We don't live in Africa, thank goodness, where that really could be true. So, most of our anxiety just comes from stories we're making up. We're thinking about everything that can go wrong, worst case scenarios, and our bodies respond as though they're real. And I think all of us, myself included, have fallen into that. So the question is, how many of us allow fear to write the declaration of our lives? Or insert your emotion, your unhelpful emotion. Fear says, don't trust, don't risk, don't shine, don't love too deeply because you might get hurt, right? If you've had that experience. Those aren't eternal truths. They are survival strategies. And that's what it's really about. The limbic brain is about survival. Healing isn't pretending the wound never happened. Healing is recognition of the hidden truth that heals. It's an act of spiritual independence. And I believe this process of overcoming fear of all kinds, anything that you're afraid of, is deeply embedded in the concept of freedom. How can you really be free when imprisoned by some other emotions that are not freedom? Often we think freedom means when circumstances change. I had a emotionally abusive marriage earlier in my life, and I yearned for freedom for sure, and that circumstance had to change in order for me to be happy. So those are the the traps that are founded in experience. We feel like freedom means when people understand us, right? But somebody else has to really get us for us to feel okay, feel free. We feel free when life gets easier. But spiritual freedom comes when we're no longer allowing old wounds to define who we are, when we courageously face the urge to avoid discomfort and, like a revolutionary soldier, rise up to fight for freedom from our own deep sense of knowing that our light can burn brighter and it does serve the greater good when we succeed. One of the deepest spiritual truths I've discovered is this: compassionate, non-judgmental awareness alone does the healing. I've experienced that over and over again. Simply bringing something buried into the light changes the energy. Sometimes the realization comes quietly, and sometimes it's like fireworks. I've always been enough. God never left me. I am not my past. Forgiveness sets me free. I believe that what Jesus meant when he said the truth makes us free is realizing an inner truth. The parts of ourselves that we disown, suppress, or hide, that the truth of these things really isn't as bad as we think. Like a blind person imagining there's a cliff when there's only a staircase. The truth that frees us is releasing anything that holds us down and lets us think we're anything other than children of love. Perhaps the greatest declaration of independence we would ever make is our declaration of independence from all the programming that makes us think that we're anything less. These things that keep us separated from the divine presence that is already alive within us. Unity has always taught that God isn't somewhere far away, and this is a great blessing to those of us who know unity. It's not something far away. It teaches that the kingdom of heaven is right here within us. And the Bible says it too. It's just, other denominations don't seem to talk about that very much. I think we have unhappiness because we hold ourselves to standards of perfection, but having an ideal is different from perfection. Perfection is impossible, but to reach for an ideal, you imagine what you might say, do, or think in support of the ideal. You have this new state of being before you, and you can ask these questions. How would it feel if I were to believe that? And of course, it's completely individual. What would I say, or what would I do if I believed this condition existed in my life? And this is a part of reprogramming, building new patterns, and each of us has to answer that individually, but it's a road to follow. And joy comes by expressing our highest and best, the highest and best of who we are, from living our ideal. It's true for a nation, it's true for a church, and it's true for every one of us. People are always fighting against external controls, but how many fight for freedom from painful experiences or from memories that make us angry? I have memories of interactions that were very unpleasant and made me really angry, and I can bring that anger back as many times as I choose to, every time I think about that interaction. Well, how is that helping me? Wouldn't healing that memory, finding some way of reaching for greater understanding, help me more? 250 years ago, people signed a Declaration of Independence because they believed freedom was worth pursuing. And today, I think each of us is invited to sign another declaration. And this is a little exercise you can participate in if you wish. If you want to grab a pen and paper, or you could even just do it in your mind, that's totally fine. Because true freedom takes a lot more than this exercise, but this is a good way to connect with the path forward by acknowledging a truth. And maybe it sounds something like this: I declare my independence from fear, and you can fill in the blank with whatever. I declare my independence from resentment. I declare my independence from shame. I declare my independence from believing I am anything less than God's beloved creation. So to feel into those things that we want to create independence from, and then cultivate, nurture what it is that we do. The greatest revolution is remembering our divine identity. When we discover the God within, freedom is no longer just an ideal. It becomes the way we live. So does anybody have any thoughts or any questions or anything that's come up? So I'd like to say a prayer, if I may. Yeah. Can we come back to ourselves and just turn within? And I would like to leave you with this. There is a light within me that no darkness can extinguish. There is a freedom within me that no circumstance can imprison. There is a joy within me waiting to bloom. I release every story that no longer serves my highest good. I welcome the healing presence of divine love. I remember who I truly am. I am free. I am whole. I am guided. I am one with God. And so it is. Amen.